I'm so glad you found your way here. Your body is healing itself right now, repairing damage while you simply exist. Tonight, you'll discover the healing secret doctors are just understanding and learn why your mind is the most powerful medicine. Welcome to Psychology for Sleep. Now settle in. You're in your safe space while your brain quietly repairs itself, clearing toxins, preparing for tomorrow. Allow yourself this moment of peace. We'll journey through 100 psychology facts about healing, from invisible cellular repair happening now, to how thoughts create healing chemicals, to the bridge between hope and recovery. This thoughtful journey through consciousness builds bridges between searching minds. Your gentle support, a like, subscribe, or a quiet share, creates a pathway for more lovers to discover and brings us closer to protect this sanctuary for every tired mind who finds their way here. One peaceful night, one sleepy soul at a time. Your healing journey inspires ours. Let yourself settle completely here. Feel your jaw unclench, your breath deepen naturally. You can let these thoughts drift past without holding them. Sense that soothing heaviness enveloping you, like your consciousness slowly dimming its brightness. Thoughts dissolving into the peaceful fog of approaching sleep, safe and undisturbed. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're floating where memories rest safely in gentle darkness. Let your mind merge with infinite peace. And now we begin. Every difficult experience leaves a neural pattern in your brain, a constellation of neurons that fire together when triggered by similar situations. These emotional memories are stored differently than facts. While you might forget details of last month's argument, your body remembers the feeling, heart rate, breathing, muscle tension, all encoded in pathways that can activate years later. These aren't just memories. They're protective systems your brain built. Sometimes, these systems become overactive, and yesterday's protection becomes today's pain. Emotional wounds aren't visible, but they create measurable changes in the brain. When researchers scan people recalling painful memories, specific regions show heightened activity. The amygdala, your brain's emotional alarm system, responds intensely. The anterior cingulate cortex, which processes distress, lights up in patterns that reveal how deeply emotional experiences shape neural function. Your nervous system registers psychological pain as genuine threat, triggering stress responses, releasing cortisol, activating protective mechanisms throughout the body. Both emotional and physical injuries require time and care to heal properly. Trauma changes brain structure. This isn't metaphorical. It's neuroplasticity in action. Repeated stress or overwhelming experiences can actually shrink the hippocampus, the region responsible for memory and emotional regulation. Meanwhile, the amygdala, already on high alert, can grow larger and more reactive. Recent imaging studies show that chronic emotional stress reduces gray matter volume in the prefrontal cortex, the area that helps you think clearly and make calm decisions. These changes aren't permanent, though the same plasticity that allows wounds to form also allows healing. Your brain can rewire itself, build new pathways, strengthen damaged regions, but it needs the right conditions. It needs rest. It needs sleep. Attachment wounds begin in childhood, but echo throughout life. Developmental psychologists have documented how early relationships with caregivers shape the brain's emotional architecture. If a child's needs for safety and comfort are consistently met, they develop secure attachment, a baseline expectation that the world is safe and people are trustworthy. But inconsistent care, neglect, or emotional unavailability creates what researchers call insecure attachment patterns. These aren't character flaws. They're adaptive strategies developed when the environment was unpredictable. A child who learned that crying brings no comfort may grow into an adult who struggles to ask for help. Someone who experienced intermittent affection may become hypervigilant in relationships, always scanning for signs of abandonment. These patterns live deep in the limbic system, beneath conscious awareness, shaping how you relate to others decades later. Your body keeps the score, even when your mind forgets. Trauma researcher Bessel van der Kolk described how emotional wounds lodge themselves in the body's tissues. You might not consciously remember a frightening event from early childhood, but your shoulders might still tense in certain situations. Your stomach might clench when someone raises their voice. Your breathing might become shallow in crowded spaces. These are somatic memories, the body's way of remembering what the conscious mind has released. Research in psychophysiology shows that unresolved experiences create persistent patterns of muscle tension and altered breathing. The wound isn't just in your thoughts, it's in your fascia, your breath, your heartbeat. Grief is a wound that doesn't follow a timeline. Despite popular models suggesting stages of grief, neuroscience research from 2024 reveals that grief is far less linear than we once believed. Brain imaging of bereaved individuals shows that grief activates the nucleus accumbens, a region associated with reward and attachment. This explains why grief can feel like craving. Your brain is literally seeking the person you've lost, expecting the reward of their presence. The pain doesn't progress neatly from denial to acceptance. Instead, it ebbs and flows, sometimes hitting with full force, months or years later when a smell, a song, or a season triggers the neural network associated with the lost person. Grief isn't something to get over. It's something to integrate, to make space for, to carry differently. Shame creates particularly deep wounds because it touches your core sense of self. While guilt says I did something bad, shame whispers, I am bad. Neuroscientist Brené Brown's research, combined with brain imaging studies, shows that shame activates regions similar to those processing physical disgust, suggesting we can feel genuinely uncomfortable with ourselves. Shame also suppresses activity in the prefrontal cortex, making it harder to think rationally or self-regulate. This is why shame spirals feel so consuming. The emotion itself impairs the very brain regions you'd need to process it. Shame thrives in secrecy and silence, but recent therapeutic research shows it begins to dissolve when spoken aloud, when witnessed without judgment. Connection, it turns out, is shame's antidote. Anxiety wounds often stem from unpredictability in early life. When a child can't predict whether their environment will be safe or chaotic, their developing brain becomes hypervigilant, always scanning for threat. This creates what neuroscientists call a sensitized threat detection system. Even in adulthood, even in objectively safe situations, the amygdala remains overactive, triggering frequent false alarms. Recent studies show that people with anxiety disorders have measurably faster amygdala response times to neutral stimuli. Their brains literally react to potential threats before the conscious mind registers them. This isn't weakness or irrationality. It's a nervous system that learned to prioritize survival over accuracy. And like all learning, it can be gently retrained. Betrayal wounds damage trust at a neurological level. When someone we rely on violates that trust, it creates what researchers call a prediction error. The brain expected safety, but received harm. This error signal is processed by the anterior cingulate cortex, which then updates your internal model of who is trustworthy. The problem is, brains overgeneralize. One betrayal can make you skeptical of many people. One broken promise can make all promises seem fragile. Studies from 2024 on trust repair show that rebuilding takes consistent, predictable positive experiences over time. The brain needs repeated evidence that the new pattern is safe before it updates its threat assessment. Trust doesn't return all at once. It grows back slowly. Like bone healing after a fracture, rejection activates the same pain pathways as physical injury. Social pain isn't just a metaphor. It's registered in the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and anterior insula, the same regions that process physical pain. Evolutionary psychologists believe this overlap exists because, for our ancestors, social exclusion was genuinely life-threatening. Being separated from the tribe meant reduced chances of survival. So our brains evolved to make social connection feel necessary. Social exclusion feel painful, motivating us to maintain bonds. The challenge in modern life is that your brain can't distinguish between being excluded from a crucial survival group and being left out of a group chat. Both trigger the same neural alarm, releasing the same stress hormones, creating the same emotional wound. Depression isn't just sadness. It's a nervous system wound. Recent neuroscience reveals that chronic stress and trauma can dysregulate the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, your body's main stress response system. When this system remains activated too long, it begins to affect the very structures meant to regulate it. The hippocampus shows changes. The prefrontal cortex demonstrates reduced activity. What we call depression is often the brain and body's exhaustion after prolonged threat response. It's physiological depletion that requires rest, nourishment, and time to restore equilibrium. Emotional flashbacks are wounds replaying themselves. Unlike the dramatic flashbacks portrayed in movies, emotional flashbacks are often subtle. A sudden wave of fear, shame, or helplessness that seems to come from nowhere. Trauma therapists recognize these as moments when a present trigger activates a past neural network. Your body responds to now as if it were then. Your heart races. Your thoughts spiral. Your throat tightens. All because something in your current environment resembled something from a painful past. The flashback isn't happening in your imagination. It's happening in your nervous system, which doesn't always distinguish between memory and reality. Learning to recognize these moments, to say this is a flashback, not current danger, begins the process of updating those old wounds. Perfectionism is often a protective wound. Children who grew up in environments where love felt conditional, dependent on achievement, appearance, or behavior, sometimes develop perfectionism as a survival strategy. If being good enough kept you safe, then being perfect might keep you safer. But perfectionism creates a different kind of wound. The constant tension between who you are and who you think you should be. Neurologically, this activates chronic stress responses. Your brain treats your own perceived inadequacy as a threat, flooding your system with cortisol. Recent research on self-compassion shows that treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a friend actually reduces this threat response, allowing the prefrontal cortex to function more effectively. Healing perfectionism means learning that you don't have to be flawless to be worthy. Loneliness creates physical changes in the body. Studies tracking people over decades show that chronic loneliness affects the body in measurable ways, increasing inflammation markers, influencing immune response, and affecting cellular processes. The body interprets prolonged isolation as a kind of environmental stress. Why would feeling alone create physical impact? Because humans are fundamentally social creatures. Our immune systems evolved expecting regular social contact. When that contact is missing, the body responds as if preparing for challenge. The wound of loneliness isn't just emotional. It's embedded in your cells, in your cardiovascular system, in your body's ability to heal itself. Anger is often a secondary emotion, covering deeper wounds. When therapists work with anger, they frequently discover pain, fear, or helplessness underneath. Anger says this shouldn't have happened, or I won't let this hurt me again. It's protective, a way the nervous system mobilizes energy to defend against threat. But chronic anger keeps the body in fight mode, elevating blood pressure, tensing muscles, flooding the system with adrenaline. Recent research on emotion regulation shows that acknowledging the vulnerability beneath anger, the hurt that sparked it, allows the nervous system to shift from defense to healing. Anger served a purpose. It kept you strong when you needed to be. But the wound it protected still needs attention. Codependency is an attachment wound, disguised as care. It develops when children learn that their own needs don't matter as much as managing others' emotions. If you had to monitor a parent's mood to feel safe, you learn to become hyper-aware of others' feelings while ignoring your own. This creates what attachment researchers call anxious, preoccupied attachment, a pattern where your sense of worth depends on others' approval and emotional state. Neurologically, this means your brain prioritizes others' emotional cues over your own internal signals. You might struggle to know what you feel, what you need, or where you end and others begin. Healing codependency means learning to turn that exquisite attunement inward, to notice and honor your own emotional landscape with the same care you give others. Dissociation is the brain's emergency exit. When an experience is too overwhelming to process, the brain can disconnect, separating consciousness from the body, emotions from awareness, memory from the present moment. This isn't weakness. It's an elegant survival mechanism. If you can't fight or flee, you freeze and fragment. But chronic dissociation, which can develop after repeated trauma, creates its own wound. You might feel numb, detached, like you're watching your life through glass. Recent neuroscience shows that dissociation involves reduced connectivity between brain regions, particularly between the prefrontal cortex and limbic system. The healing process involves gently rebuilding those connections, learning to stay present with difficult emotions in small, manageable doses. Comparison wounds thrive in the age of social media. Human brains evolved to compare ourselves with a small tribe, not millions of curated highlights. When you scroll through carefully selected moments from others' lives, your brain registers each polished image as evidence that everyone else has it together while you're struggling. This triggers what psychologists call upward social comparison, which reliably increases feelings of inadequacy and depression. The wound isn't that you're actually less successful, happy, or worthy. It's that your brain is processing an artificially skewed sample. Recent research on digital well-being shows that even brief breaks from social media can significantly improve mood and self-esteem. Sometimes, healing means protecting yourself from constant comparison. People-pleasing is a fawn response, another trauma adaptation, along with fight, flight, and freeze. Some nervous systems learned a fourth response: appease the threat. If you couldn't escape danger, maybe you could make yourself so agreeable, so helpful, so pleasant that you'd be safe. This creates a pattern where you reflexively prioritize others' needs, suppress your own boundaries, and feel intense anxiety at the thought of disappointing anyone. The wound isn't just behavioral. It's wired into your threat detection system. Saying no can feel genuinely dangerous because your nervous system remembers times when it was. Healing means slowly teaching your body that it's safe to have needs, safe to have limits, safe to be imperfect. Imposter syndrome is a competence wound. Despite evidence of skill and achievement, you feel like a fraud, certain that someday everyone will discover you don't actually belong. Psychologists first identified this pattern in high-achieving women, but recent research shows it affects people across genders, often those from marginalized groups or those who were first in their families to access certain opportunities. The wound stems from a mismatch between internal experience and external perception. You attribute success to luck rather than ability. You discount evidence of competence. Neurologically, this involves the brain's tendency toward negativity bias. Painful memories stick more than positive ones. Healing imposter syndrome means deliberately weighting the evidence equally, allowing yourself to genuinely accept what you've accomplished. Abandonment wounds create hypervigilance in relationships. If significant people left through death, divorce, emotional unavailability, or literal departure, your brain learned that attachment leads to loss. This creates what attachment theory calls anxious attachment, where you constantly monitor relationships for signs of withdrawal. You might need frequent reassurance. You might interpret normal distance as rejection. You might even push people away before they can leave you. A self-protective pattern called self-abandonment. Recent neuroimaging shows that people with abandonment wounds have heightened amygdala response to neutral facial expressions, literally seeing threat in ambiguous social cues. The wound makes you perceive danger where there may be none. Emotional neglect creates an invisible wound, unlike abuse, which leaves identifiable scars. Neglect is defined by absence. The comfort that didn't come, the emotions that weren't validated, the needs that went unmet. Children raised with emotional neglect often grow up feeling empty, disconnected, uncertain of their own feelings. They might struggle to identify emotions or believe their needs are legitimate. This happens because emotional attunement from caregivers literally shapes brain development. The neural pathways for emotional awareness strengthen through repeated experiences of being seen, understood, and responded to. When those experiences are missing, those pathways remain underdeveloped. But the brain's plasticity means they can still grow, even in adulthood, through therapy, safe relationships, and deliberate self-awareness practice. Generational trauma can be passed down through parenting patterns and even genetics. Research in epigenetics reveals that severe trauma can alter gene expression in ways that affect the next generation. Children of Holocaust survivors, for instance, show measurable differences in stress hormone regulation compared to control groups, despite never experiencing the original trauma themselves. These aren't genetic mutations, but epigenetic changes, essentially molecular memories that influence how genes are activated. Additionally, trauma shapes parenting behaviors. A parent who never learned emotional regulation can't easily teach it. Unprocessed wounds become the atmosphere a child grows up in. Healing generational trauma means not just addressing your own pain, but consciously choosing not to pass unexamined patterns forward. Chronic stress creates cumulative wounds. Each individual stressor might be manageable, but when they compound without adequate recovery, they create what researchers call allostatic load, the wear and tear on the body from chronic stress response activation. Your cardiovascular system, immune function, metabolic processes, and brain structure all show measurable changes. Recent studies tracking stress over years show that high allostatic load predicts earlier onset of age-related diseases, cognitive decline, and mortality. The wound isn't from one event, but from the relentless accumulation. Your body never fully returns to baseline. It stays in a state of defensive readiness that exhausts its own resources. Healing requires not just removing stressors, but actively building in periods of genuine restoration. So yes, emotional wounds are real, measurable, and stored in both mind and body. They're not weaknesses or failures. They're evidence that you survived difficult experiences. Your brain adapted to keep you safe. Your nervous system learned from your environment. These wounds shaped the architecture of how you think, feel, and relate to the world. But here's what's also true. The same neuroplasticity that created these patterns can change them. The brain that learned fear can learn safety. The body that learned to brace can learn to relax. The next question isn't whether these wounds exist. It's whether sleep, that nightly journey into unconsciousness, might be one of nature's most powerful healing processes. Let's pause here and notice your body. As you breathe out slowly, appreciate each tiny cell inside. Trillions of organisms working in silence, heart beating, lungs breathing, brain thinking, all without your command. Notice the gentle sensations on your skin, in your muscles, along your spine. You are a complete ecosystem, diverse, self-balancing. Now we continue. Sleep is when your brain sorts through the day's emotional debris. While you're unconscious, your hippocampus replays the day's experiences, deciding what to keep, what to discard, and where to file everything. This process, called memory consolidation, isn't neutral. It's deeply emotional. Your brain doesn't just remember facts. It processes feelings. Studies using functional MRI during sleep show that the amygdala and hippocampus communicate intensely during REM sleep, the stage when most vivid dreaming occurs. They're essentially having a conversation about which emotional memories matter enough to store long-term and which can fade. This overnight sorting is how your brain makes sense of experience. Your brain can detect unresolved emotional content during sleep, Research continues to reveal that when people go to bed with unprocessed emotions, an unresolved argument, suppressed grief, lingering anxiety, their sleep patterns often shift. They may experience more time in lighter sleep stages and less deep restorative sleep. The brain essentially refuses to fully rest when emotional material needs attention. It's not conscious decision-making. It's your nervous system's way of saying something here needs processing. This is why stressful periods often bring restless sleep. Your brain is working overtime, trying to integrate what the waking mind hasn't fully addressed. REM sleep is particularly sensitive to emotional distress. When you're dealing with significant emotional wounds, your REM periods change. You might have more of them, longer ones, or more intense ones. Brain imaging shows heightened activity in the amygdala during REM sleep in people with PTSD, depression, or recent trauma. Your dreaming brain is essentially rehearsing emotional scenarios, trying to process what happened. Sometimes this helps. Sometimes it re-traumatizes. The difference often comes down to whether you feel safe enough in your environment and your nervous system to actually integrate the emotions rather than just replay the threat. Dreams are your brain's therapy session. While the exact function of dreaming remains partially mysterious, mounting evidence suggests dreams help process emotional experiences. The threat simulation theory proposes that dreams let you practice responding to dangers in a safe space. The emotional regulation theory suggests dreams strip the emotional charge from memories, allowing you to remember events without being overwhelmed by the feelings. Recent studies show that people deprived of REM sleep struggle significantly more with emotional regulation the next day. They're more reactive, more irritable, less able to manage difficult feelings. Dreams, strange as they are, appear to serve emotional healing. Your sleeping brain can identify which emotions need attention. It does this through a process of activation and reactivation. During sleep, neural patterns associated with recent emotional experiences spontaneously reactivate. If you had a painful conversation, the neural network that encoded that conversation might fire again during sleep. Your brain is essentially bringing that memory back up, but in a different context, without the immediate threat, without the defensive reactions. This creates an opportunity to process it differently, to integrate it more fully. Sleep provides what psychologists call a safe container for revisiting difficult material. Sleep deprivation impairs your ability to read emotions. When you're exhausted, you're more likely to perceive neutral faces as hostile or threatening. Studies show that after just one night of poor sleep, the amygdala shows significantly heightened response to negative emotional stimuli. Meanwhile, connectivity between the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, the pathway that helps regulate emotional responses, weakens. This means you're both more sensitive to perceived threats and less able to calm yourself down. Chronic sleep loss essentially creates a state of emotional vulnerability where wounds are both more easily inflicted and harder to heal. Your body's stress response depends on sleep for reset. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which governs cortisol release and stress reactivity, follows a circadian rhythm that depends on quality sleep. Deep sleep is when cortisol levels drop to their lowest point, allowing your system to recover from the day's stress. Without adequate sleep, cortisol remains elevated, keeping your body in a state of alert. Over time, This dysregulates the entire stress response system. You become hypersensitive, reactive, unable to distinguish between real threats and minor inconveniences. Sleep is how your threat detection system recalibrates to accuracy. Sleep can tell you what you're avoiding. Pay attention to when your sleep deteriorates. Is it after certain types of social interactions, during anniversary, dates of losses? When you're facing specific decisions, these patterns aren't random. Your nervous system knows what feels dangerous, even if your conscious mind has labeled it fine. Disrupted sleep is often your body's way of saying there's unprocessed material here. It's not punishment, it's information. Learning to read your sleep patterns can help you identify emotional wounds you might otherwise dismiss or deny. The glymphatic system clears emotional residue. This waste clearance system, discovered relatively recently, is most active during deep sleep. It flushes metabolic waste from the brain, including proteins associated with stress and inflammation. But emerging research suggests it might also clear neurochemical byproducts of emotional experiences. The stress hormones, neurotransmitters, and inflammatory molecules released during difficult emotional events all need to be metabolized and removed. Sleep is when this happens most efficiently. Without it, these molecules accumulate, potentially contributing to mood disorders and emotional dysregulation. Your sleeping brain rehearses emotional regulation strategies during REM sleep. The prefrontal cortex shows periodic activity, particularly regions involved in emotion regulation and decision-making. It's as if your brain is practicing how to handle emotional challenges while you're unconscious. Studies show that people who sleep after learning an emotional regulation technique show better mastery of it than those who don't sleep. Sleep consolidates not just memories, but skills, including the skill of managing your own emotions. This is why a problem that feels overwhelming at night often seems more manageable in the morning. Sleep loss makes old wounds more painful. Research tracking people with PTSD shows that sleep deprivation increases intrusive memories and emotional flashbacks. The same is true for people dealing with grief, heartbreak, or anxiety. When you're exhausted, your brain's ability to suppress unwanted memories weakens. The memories you've been managing to keep at bay during the day surface more easily. You're not getting worse. You're just too tired to maintain the cognitive effort required to regulate those memories. Sleep is what restores that regulatory capacity. Nightmares are sometimes healing attempts gone wrong. When your brain tries to process trauma during sleep but doesn't have the resources to fully integrate it, you can end up with nightmares. The same threatening scenario, replaying without resolution. This is particularly common in PTSD, where the threat response is so ingrained that even during sleep, your brain can't access the safety needed for true processing. The nightmare is your brain trying to work through something, but getting stuck in the fear response. Some trauma therapies specifically target nightmares, teaching people to rehearse different endings while awake, giving the sleeping brain an alternative script. Sleep stages have different emotional functions. Light sleep seems to process recent, less intense emotions, the minor irritations and small pleasures of the day. Deep sleep appears to work on physiological stress recovery, lowering inflammation and stress hormones. REM sleep tackles the more complex emotional material, the grief, fear, anger, shame that need narrative processing. This is why balanced sleep, cycling through all stages multiple times, is so important. Each stage offers a different kind of emotional healing. Disrupted sleep architecture means some types of emotional wounds don't get the processing they need. Your sleeping brain knows what you feel, even when you don't. People often report waking with clarity about emotions they couldn't identify while awake. You go to sleep confused and wake knowing you're angry, or sad, or afraid. This happens because sleep reduces the cognitive defenses you maintain during waking hours. The rationalizations, minimizations, and distractions fall away. Your unconscious emotional processing can surface more clearly. Sleep provides access to emotional truth that your waking mind might be protecting you from. Sometimes this truth is difficult, but it's also necessary for healing. So how does sleep detect emotional wounds? Through changes in sleep architecture, through dream content, through stress hormone levels, through patterns of neural activation. Your brain doesn't need you to consciously identify your pain. It registers the signature of unprocessed emotion and responds by attempting to integrate it during sleep. Whether that process succeeds depends on many factors. How safe you feel, how rested you are, whether the wound is recent or ancient. But the detection happens automatically. Your sleeping brain is always scanning, always attempting to heal. The question is whether you'll give it the conditions it needs to succeed. You're still here with me. Thoughts still flickering like candlelight. Just notice. Don't judge. Just notice where your mind is. We're exploring consciousness itself. The very thing doing the exploring right now. Strange, beautiful, and perfectly calm. Let's drift onward together. During REM sleep, your brain strips emotional charge from memories. This process, called emotional memory reconsolidation, allows you to remember events without being overwhelmed by the feelings. The hippocampus reactivates the memory, while the amygdala processes the emotion. But crucially, stress hormone levels are suppressed during REM. This creates a unique neurochemical environment where you can revisit painful experiences without the full fight-or-flight response. Over multiple nights, the memory gradually loses its emotional intensity. You still remember what happened, but it no longer hijacks your nervous system. This is why time, and specifically, time with quality sleep, really does help heal emotional wounds. Sleep helps update your threat assessment system. When you experience something frightening or painful, your amygdala marks it as dangerous. This is protective in the short term. But if every similar situation continues triggering full threat response, you live in chronic fear. During sleep, particularly during the theta wave activity of light sleep and REM transitions, the prefrontal cortex can communicate with the amygdala more effectively. It essentially provides context. That was dangerous then, but this situation now is different. Research from 2024 shows that this prefrontal amygdala dialogue during sleep is crucial for fear extinction. The process of learning that something is no longer threatening. Deep sleep lowers inflammation caused by emotional stress. Chronic stress triggers inflammatory processes throughout the body, including neuroinflammation in the brain. This inflammation impairs mood regulation and can contribute to depression. During slow-wave deep sleep, the parasympathetic nervous system dominates. Anti-inflammatory processes activate, and inflammatory molecules are metabolized. Studies measuring inflammatory markers like IL-6 and CRP show significant decreases after quality sleep, increases after sleep deprivation. This isn't just correlation. Sleep directly modulates inflammatory pathways. Healing emotional wounds requires calming the body's inflammatory response, and sleep is when that happens most effectively. Sleep restores your capacity for empathy and connection. When you're sleep deprived, brain regions involved in social cognition and theory of mind, the ability to understand others' perspectives, show reduced activity. You become more self-focused, less able to read social cues, more likely to misinterpret others' intentions. This matters for emotional healing because connection is often the antidote to emotional wounds. Shame heals in the presence of acceptance. Loneliness heals through belonging. Betrayal heals through renewed trust. But all of these require your social brain to function well. Sleep is what maintains that capacity. REM sleep might integrate conflicting emotions. Many emotional wounds involve ambivalence. Loving and resenting the same person, feeling both angry and guilty, wanting something and fearing it. The waking mind struggles with contradiction, trying to resolve it into a single clear feeling. But REM sleep shows simultaneous activation of brain regions associated with different emotions. Some researchers believe this allows for integration rather than resolution, learning to hold complexity rather than forcing simplification. Dreams often contain contradictory elements because they're processing contradictory feelings. This might be the brain's way of making peace with emotional complexity rather than denying it. Sleep consolidates therapeutic gains. If you've been in therapy, practicing meditation, or working actively on emotional healing, sleep is when those efforts become encoded. The neural patterns you deliberately practiced while awake get strengthened during sleep. Brain imaging shows that regions activated during learning, a new emotional regulation technique, shows similar activation patterns during subsequent sleep. Your sleeping brain is essentially rehearsing what you practiced, making it more automatic, more accessible. This is why consistent sleep matters so much during periods of active healing work. You're not just resting, you're cementing the changes you're trying to make. The default mode network reorganizes during sleep. This brain network, active when you're not focused on external tasks, is involved in self-reflection, memory, and simulating future scenarios. In people with depression or anxiety, the default mode network often shows problematic patterns: rumination, negative self-focus, catastrophic future thinking. During sleep, particularly during deep sleep, this network shows decreased activity and altered connectivity. It's essentially getting a reset, a break from the habitual negative patterns. Upon waking, the default mode network often functions differently, at least temporarily. This is one reason mornings can feel clearer, lighter, more hopeful. Sleep allows implicit learning of safety. Explicit learning is conscious. You tell yourself, "I'm safe. There's no danger here." But emotional wounds often live in implicit memory systems that don't respond to conscious reasoning. During sleep, your brain can form new implicit associations. If you consistently sleep in a safe environment, if you wake repeatedly to find yourself unharmed, your nervous system gradually learns safety at a deep, non-verbal level. This happens through repeated experience, not through thought. over months and years. Quality sleep in safety can literally retrain a traumatized nervous system to expect safety rather than threat. Sleep helps you forget what you don't need to remember. This sounds counterintuitive, but it's crucial. Your brain can't store everything with equal intensity. During sleep, there's an active process of weakening certain synaptic connections while strengthening others. Irrelevant details fade. Unimportant moments dissolve. This isn't failure. It's efficiency. For emotional healing, this means that while the core of an important memory might remain, peripheral details that intensify pain can fade. You might remember the fact of a loss without remembering every moment of the final conversation. You might remember being hurt without remembering every painful word. Sleep's selective forgetting is a form of mercy. Halfway through our journey, the pattern is becoming clear. Sleep doesn't just detect emotional wounds. It actively works to repair them. Through chemical processes that calm inflammation, through neural processes that update threat memories, through architectural reorganization of brain networks, through the mysterious theater of dreams. Your sleeping brain is never idle. It's tirelessly working to integrate what you experienced, to regulate what you feel, to prepare you for tomorrow. The repair mechanisms are elegant and complex, honed by millions of years of evolution, but they require cooperation. They require enough sleep, quality sleep, safe sleep. The question now is why? Why did evolution build healing into sleep? What makes nighttime unconsciousness the optimal time for emotional repair? Breathe slowly. Let each breath guide you to realize time is yours, a separate stream that only you are living. While the vast universe continues to spin, expand, change. This second you're breathing, listening, is unique. Cherish the present moment, knowing that right now, your time is unique in the universe. And we continue drifting. Evolution is ruthlessly efficient. Any process that consumes a third of your life must provide significant survival advantage. Sleep makes you vulnerable, unconscious, unresponsive, unable to gather food, defend against threats, or reproduce. For sleep to evolve despite these costs, its benefits must be extraordinary. Emotional regulation clearly confers survival advantage. Mammals who can learn from threatening experiences without remaining permanently terrified, who can maintain social bonds despite conflicts, who can recover from loss and continue seeking connection. These animals survive and reproduce more successfully. Sleep evolved to heal emotional wounds because emotional resilience enhances survival. The separation of memory from emotion is evolutionarily brilliant. Imagine if every close call remained as emotionally intense as the original experience. You'd be unable to function in similar situations again. By allowing the hippocampus to store the factual memory, what happened, when, where, while the amygdala gradually reduces the emotional intensity. Sleep lets you learn from experience without being paralyzed by it. You can remember a difficult conversation without your heart racing. You can recall a loss without drowning in grief. This process, perfected over millions of years, is what modern therapy sometimes tries to recreate artificially through techniques like EMDR or exposure therapy. But nature built it into sleep. Social mammals need particularly sophisticated emotional processing. Humans, primates, elephants, Dolphins. Species with complex social structures show longer and more elaborate REM sleep than solitary species. This isn't coincidence. Social living requires managing relationships, remembering who is trustworthy, navigating conflicts, maintaining alliances. These are all emotionally complex tasks. The evolution of complex sociality and the evolution of elaborate REM sleep likely occurred together, each enabling the other. Your capacity to heal from social wounds while sleeping is what allows you to live in community despite inevitable conflicts and hurts. Sleep evolved to happen in safe places. Most animals have specific sleep sites: dens, nests, burrows, particular trees. This is significant. For sleep's healing functions to work, your nervous system must register safety. You can't process trauma while feeling threatened. The setup of a safe sleep environment is ancient, wired deep into mammalian biology. When you create a comfortable bedroom, when you establish bedtime rituals, when you make your sleep space feel secure, you're not being indulgent. You're providing the evolutionary prerequisite for healing. Circadian rhythms align emotional processing with optimal neurochemical states. During the day, cortisol and norepinephrine are higher, keeping you alert and responsive. These same chemicals, when elevated, enhance threat memory formation. At night, they drop, and other neurochemicals rise. Particularly during REM sleep, norepinephrine reaches its lowest point. This creates the perfect environment for emotional memory processing without re-traumatization. Evolution timed emotional healing to occur precisely when your neurochemistry supports it. The 24-hour cycle isn't arbitrary. It's optimized for both survival vigilance during the day and emotional integration at night. Sleep deprivation was likely rare in ancestral environments. Before artificial light, before shift work, before digital devices, humans probably slept when it got dark and woke with light, averaging 8 to 9 hours per night, seasonally adjusted. Chronic sleep deprivation is a modern phenomenon. Evolution didn't prepare us for it, because it rarely occurred. The emotional regulation systems built into sleep assume you'll actually get enough sleep. When you don't, these systems fail in predictable ways. Increased reactivity, impaired regulation, difficulty recovering from stress. You're not weak for struggling when sleep deprived. You're operating outside evolutionary parameters. Dreams might serve a next-day preparation function. Some researchers propose that dreams don't just process yesterday. They prepare for tomorrow. By simulating emotional scenarios during REM sleep, your brain rehearses responses to potential threats and challenges. This would explain why dreams often involve anxiety-provoking situations. They're not torturing you, they're training you. Like a flight simulator for emotional challenges. This preparation function would have obvious survival value. The better prepared you are emotionally for tomorrow's challenges, the more likely you are to navigate them successfully. Sleep synchronizes emotional experience with circadian and seasonal cycles. Many emotional difficulties follow predictable patterns. Worse in winter, worse at night, worse during certain times of the month. Sleep helps your emotional state align with these natural rhythms, rather than fighting them. When you're in sync with circadian biology, mood regulation becomes easier. When you're desynchronized, jet-lagged, doing shift work, staying up late, mood regulation deteriorates. Evolution built emotional healing into a 24-hour cycle because that's the cycle of your planet, your sun, your fundamental biological reality. The vulnerability of sleep might itself be therapeutic. You must let go of control to sleep. You must trust that you'll be safe while unconscious. For people with control-related trauma, this can be terrifying, but it's also practice in surrender, in trust, in allowing your body to take over. Every night you successfully sleep is evidence that you can let go and be okay. This repeated experience might gradually teach your nervous system that not everything requires vigilant control. Vulnerability, in the right context, can be safe. Sleep is daily practice in that truth. Sleep evolved to integrate waking and unconscious processing. During the day, you're problem-solving consciously, navigating social situations, responding to immediate demands. At night, unconscious processes take over, sorting memories, integrating experiences, finding patterns you couldn't see while focused. Many emotional insights come during or after sleep because your unconscious mind has been working on them. This division of labor is evolutionarily efficient. Conscious processing handles immediate threats and opportunities. Unconscious processing, during sleep, handles integration and meaning-making. Mother-infant cows sleeping in ancestral environments provided safety for emotional processing. For most of human history, infants and young children slept in close proximity to caregivers. This meant their nervous systems could relax into deeper sleep, secure in the presence of protection. Adults, too, likely slept in social groups rather than alone. The presence of safe others might facilitate deeper emotional processing. Some research on couples suggests that secure attachment is associated with better sleep quality. You might sleep more restoratively when you feel socially connected, because that's the context in which sleep evolved. The profound impact of sleep deprivation on emotional well-being has been recognized throughout history. Without sleep, the ability to resist emotional stress crumbles. You become more suggestible, emotionally variable, less able to maintain psychological boundaries. This demonstrates how deeply emotional strength depends on adequate rest. Evolution built emotional resilience on the foundation of sleep. Remove that foundation, and psychological functioning deteriorates rapidly. The fact that sleep deprivation has such powerful effects demonstrates how critical sleep is to emotional well-being. Sleep architecture changes across the lifespan, matching developmental emotional needs. Infants spend about 50% of sleep in REM, processing the overwhelming amount of new emotional learning they do daily. This gradually decreases through childhood as the brain matures. In adolescence, when identity formation and peer relationships become central, REM sleep remains substantial. In older adults, REM decreases further, but deep sleep often decreases more. Each life stage has different emotional processing needs, and sleep architecture adapts accordingly. Evolution fine-tuned sleep to match developmental emotional requirements. The evolution of language might have increased the need for sleep-based emotional processing. Language allows humans to share complex emotional experiences, to revisit past events through storytelling, to anticipate future scenarios verbally. This creates more material for the brain to process. Pre-linguistic animals process primarily direct emotional experiences. Humans must process both direct experiences and all the emotional content conveyed through language. stories we hear, conversations we have, even books we read. Sleep's emotional processing functions might have become more elaborate as language evolved, giving humans a way to integrate the vastly increased emotional information load. We now understand that sleep evolved to heal emotional wounds because emotional resilience was essential for survival. The ability to learn from painful experiences without being paralyzed by them. To maintain social bonds despite conflicts. To recover from losses and continue engaging with life. These capacities dramatically improved survival and reproductive success. Sleep is the neurobiological mechanism evolution developed to make emotional resilience possible. It's not a luxury or weakness to need sleep for emotional well-being. It's fundamental biology. Your brain evolved to do its most important emotional work while you're unconscious. Sleep provides the neurochemical environment impossible to achieve while awake. The specific combination of low cortisol, low norepinephrine, theta waves, and REM creates conditions that simply don't exist during waking hours. No amount of meditation, therapy, or conscious processing can fully replicate what happens in this unique brain state. This is why you can talk about a problem all day and still wake with new clarity. The sleep state itself, the neurochemistry, the brain waves, the unconsciousness, provides something qualitatively different than any waking intervention. Some evolutionary theorists propose that because humans developed sophisticated sleep-based emotional processing, they became capable of living in larger social groups, navigating more complex relationships, and accumulating cultural knowledge across generations. Each night's sleep may have allowed individuals to digest the emotional complexity of the day, maintaining the psychological flexibility needed for sophisticated social cooperation. Without sleep's emotional healing, human civilization as we know it might not have been possible. The nightly restoration of emotional regulation may be part of what makes human culture feasible. Sleep's emotional healing is automatic, but it's not guaranteed. Evolution provided the mechanism, but it requires the right conditions: safety, adequate duration, minimal disruption, relatively low baseline stress. These create the environment where sleep's healing functions work optimally. In modern environments filled with artificial light, chronic stress, irregular schedules, and social isolation, many people don't get the sleep quality that their biology expects. The mechanism is there, refined over millions of years, but the conditions are often missing. Dreams might be evolution's way of practicing emotional flexibility. By presenting bizarre, illogical, emotionally intense scenarios, dreams force your brain to find meaning in chaos, to regulate emotions in surreal contexts, to maintain coherent sense of self despite impossible situations. This nightly practice in flexibility might enhance your capacity to handle unexpected emotional challenges while awake. You've already navigated stranger things in your dreams than you're likely to encounter in waking life. Each night, you practice emotional resilience in the dream world's safe simulation. Evolution built redundancy into emotional healing. Sleep is primary, but not the only mechanism. Social connection, physical movement, creative expression, time in nature, all these also facilitate emotional processing. This redundancy makes sense evolutionarily. If sleep is disrupted, you're not entirely without resources, but sleep remains the most efficient, most comprehensive mechanism. It's the primary system, with others serving as important supplements. The fact that evolution created multiple healing pathways suggests how critical emotional resilience was to survival. The loss of sleep quality with age might reflect changing evolutionary priorities. Once you've passed reproductive years, evolutionary pressure decreases. Many aspects of physical function decline. Muscle mass, bone density, sensory acuity. Sleep quality also declines. Older adults get less deep sleep, less REM, and experience more fragmentation. From a purely evolutionary perspective, post-reproductive individuals are no longer under the same selection pressure. But from an individual well-being perspective, this sleep decline contributes to emotional difficulties in aging. Understanding that it's normal doesn't make it less challenging. Sleep-based emotional healing might be what allows hope. After terrible events, after profound losses, after seemingly unbearable pain, humans often find a way to continue, to rebuild, to open themselves to life again. This isn't universal or guaranteed, but it's common enough to be remarkable. Part of this resilience might come from sleep's nightly work, gradually reducing the emotional intensity of painful memories, helping you integrate loss, allowing grief to transform. Without this mechanism, recovery from trauma would be far more difficult. Hope might be, in part, the accumulated effect of many nights of emotional processing during sleep. The evolution of complex emotional healing through sleep created a vulnerability. Because the system assumes adequate sleep, it fails dramatically when sleep is insufficient. Our ancestors couldn't choose to stay awake all night, working under artificial light. That choice didn't exist. Modern humans can make that choice, but they pay for it in emotional dysregulation. Evolution couldn't prepare for this scenario because it was impossible in the environment where our brains evolved. We're using ancient emotional regulation systems in environments they weren't designed for. Understanding sleep's evolutionary function doesn't diminish its current importance. Just because something evolved for survival doesn't mean it's not also meaningful. Healing, necessary for well-being. Sexual attraction evolved for reproduction, but that doesn't make love less real. Grief evolved to motivate social cohesion, but that doesn't make loss less painful. Sleep evolved to process emotions and consolidate learning, but that doesn't make it less essential for your current well-being. The evolutionary why doesn't replace the experiential importance. So sleep evolved to heal emotional wounds because emotional resilience conferred survival advantage. The elaborate mechanisms. REM, sleep's memory processing. Deep sleep's inflammation reduction. The neurochemical environment that allows reprocessing without re-traumatization. All these are evolutionary gifts. They're systems honed over millions of years to help you recover from pain, learn from experience, and maintain the emotional flexibility needed for complex social life. When you sleep well, you're using these ancient systems as they were designed to be used. When you can't sleep, you're operating without evolutionary support, trying to function in ways your brain wasn't built to sustain. You might be feeling tired now. That's perfectly fine. Breathe slowly. Feel the cycles. Spacecraft orbit Earth. Earth orbits the Sun. The Sun orbits the center of the Milky Way. All are circles. Cycles. Endless orbits. Like your breath. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. A small cycle within the vast universe. You are also part of that eternal movement. You don't need to hold on to anything. Let everything unfold in its perfect order, like planets silently rotating in their orbits. Unhurried, unresisting, simply existing. We're almost there now. Your emotional wounds are not permanent. This is perhaps the most important thing to understand. The neural patterns that create suffering can change. The body that learned fear can learn safety. The nervous system that stays hypervigilant can learn to rest. Neuroplasticity means your brain is always capable of rewiring, regardless of age, regardless of how long you've carried the wound. Sleep is one of the primary mechanisms through which this rewiring happens. Each night offers opportunity. Each morning brings possibility. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without being overwhelmed. The goal isn't to erase painful experiences from your memory. It's to integrate them so they no longer control you. Sleep helps achieve this by separating the factual memory from the emotional intensity. You can remember difficult things without your heart racing. You can acknowledge loss without drowning in it. This is what healed memory looks like. Present but not dominating. Informative but not imprisoning. Sleep might be the gentlest form of therapy. Unlike active interventions that require conscious effort and vulnerability while awake, sleep works while you're unconscious. You don't have to deliberately revisit trauma. You don't have to talk about pain. You simply sleep, and the healing processes unfold automatically. For people who find traditional therapy difficult or inaccessible, improving sleep quality might be a profound intervention. It's not a replacement for therapy, but it's foundational. You're more likely to benefit from any therapeutic approach when your brain is well rested. Prioritizing sleep is not weakness or laziness. Given what we understand about sleep's role in emotional healing, getting adequate rest is an active choice for well-being. It's treating your brain the way you'd treat a healing wound, with care, protection, and patience. When you choose sleep over late-night work, over scrolling, over staying up out of anxiety, you're choosing healing. You're giving your brain the conditions it needs to do its restorative work. This is strength, not weakness. Your sleep environment matters more than you might think. If your bedroom feels unsafe, whether due to actual danger, relationship conflict, or just clutter and chaos, your nervous system can't fully relax into deep sleep. The healing processes that require feeling safe simply won't engage fully. Creating a calm, comfortable, safe sleep environment isn't frivolous. It's providing the evolutionary prerequisite for emotional healing. Sometimes improving your mental health starts with improving your bedroom. Trauma often disrupts sleep, creating a difficult cycle. The very wounds that most need sleep's healing power often prevent sleep. Nightmares, hypervigilance, anxiety about letting go of control. All these make sleep difficult. But understanding this cycle creates opportunity for intervention. Trauma-focused therapy often includes sleep work, addressing nightmares, establishing safety, gradually rebuilding trust in the sleep process. These become part of trauma treatment. Breaking the cycle at the sleep point can accelerate overall healing. Sleep loss makes you more vulnerable to future wounds. When you're exhausted, your emotional defenses are down. Comments that wouldn't normally bother you feel devastating. Minor conflicts escalate. You're more likely to misinterpret others' intentions. This creates a vulnerability where new emotional wounds form more easily. Protecting your sleep is protecting yourself from unnecessary pain. It's maintaining the emotional resilience that prevents ordinary difficulties from becoming traumatic. Different wounds heal at different rates during sleep. Recent emotional pain, a fresh argument, a new loss, acute stress, often shows relatively quick improvement with good sleep. But deep, complex trauma accumulated over years won't resolve in a few nights. Sleep contributes to healing, but it's gradual. Think of it like physical healing. A paper cut resolves quickly. A broken bone takes weeks. And deep tissue damage might require months. Emotional healing through sleep follows similar timeframes. Some patience with yourself is part of the process. You can support your sleep's healing work. While the mechanisms are automatic, you can create conditions that help. Regular sleep schedule, darkness, coolness, quiet, safety. These basics matter. Avoiding alcohol before sleep, which disrupts REM. Minimizing screen time, which disrupts circadian rhythms. Processing emotions during the day through journaling, talking, or therapy. Giving sleep clearer material to work with. You can't force healing, but you can remove obstacles to it. Sometimes nighttime is harder because daytime distractions are gone. Many people notice their emotional pain more acutely at night. This isn't imagination. During the day, you're busy, distracted, managing tasks. At night, in quiet and darkness, there's nowhere to hide from your feelings. Sleep should eventually provide relief, but the period before sleep can be when wounds hurt most. Understanding this is normal can reduce the secondary suffering of thinking something's wrong with you. It's just that night reveals what day allows you to avoid. Deep grief and complex wounds take time to integrate. Even with good sleep, loss of a person, a relationship, a version of yourself. These profound losses change your brain's entire architecture. Sleep will help. Each night processes a little more. Some mornings you wake feeling lighter. Others, heavier. This doesn't mean sleep failed. Emotional processing often surfaces difficult material before it can truly settle. The wound of profound loss might never fully close, but sleep helps it become more bearable, more integrated, gradually less raw. Give yourself patience. Sleep deprivation from new parenthood is biologically significant. Evolution didn't solve this problem because caregiving infants was shared across many individuals in ancestral environments. Modern parents, often isolated with sole responsibility, experience sleep deprivation levels that impair emotional regulation dramatically. This isn't weakness. The emotional struggles of new parents are partly neurobiological. Your regulation systems are offline. Understanding this doesn't solve it, but it can reduce shame. You're not failing. You're sleep deprived, which makes everything harder. Consistency matters more than perfection. You don't need flawless sleep every night. The healing processes are resilient, but they need consistency. Chronic variability prevents your brain from establishing reliable patterns. A mediocre but consistent schedule often serves healing better than occasional perfect nights mixed with terrible ones. Some medications that help sleep can affect emotional processing. Benzodiazepines might help you fall asleep, but can suppress REM sleep. Alcohol similarly makes you drowsy, but fragments sleep and reduces REM. This doesn't mean never use them. Sometimes immediate relief matters, but understanding the trade-off helps you make informed choices. Your body knows how to heal. You don't need to understand these mechanisms for them to work. Just as your skin knows how to close a cut without your conscious instruction, your brain knows how to process emotions during sleep. But understanding can help you trust the process. When sleep feels like giving up or wasting time, remembering that it's active healing might help you prioritize it. You're not doing nothing while you sleep. You're doing some of the most important psychological work possible. Emotional healing during sleep is deeply personal. Two people with similar wounds might process them entirely differently. One person's dreams might be vivid and disturbing. Another's might be bland. One might need 9 hours. Another heals well on 7. There's no single right way. Your brain will find its own path through sleep's healing processes. Comparing your sleep or your healing to others creates unnecessary suffering. Trust your own brain's wisdom about what it needs. Sometimes the wound that's healing isn't the one you expect. You might go to sleep worried about work stress and wake with clarity about a relationship. You might be consciously processing grief and find anxiety improves. Sleep doesn't necessarily work on what you want it to work on. It addresses what your nervous system determines is most urgent. This can be frustrating, but it might also be wise. Your unconscious often knows what needs attention before your conscious mind does. You deserve rest regardless of productivity. In cultures that value constant activity, sleep can feel like weakness or laziness, but your worth isn't determined by output. You deserve rest simply because you're a living being with a nervous system that requires sleep to function. The healing that happens during sleep isn't just about making you more functional tomorrow. It's about your inherent right to well-being. You don't have to earn sleep through exhaustion. You deserve it simply because you exist. Sleep connects you to something larger than individual experience. Every human who has ever lived has slept, has dreamed, has used these ancient processes to heal emotional wounds. When you sleep, you're participating in a universal human experience that spans cultures, centuries, and continents. You're using the same neural mechanisms that helped your ancestors survive grief, process fear, and maintain hope. There's something profound about this continuity. You're not alone in your suffering or your healing. You're part of an endless chain of humans learning to recover from pain. The question isn't whether sleep can repair emotional wounds. The evidence is clear. It can and does. The question is whether you'll give yourself the conditions for that healing to occur. Adequate time, consistent schedule, safe environment, minimal disruption. These aren't luxuries. They're prerequisites for the healing your brain is trying to do every night. You can't force healing, but you can stop preventing it. You can remove the obstacles. You can choose rest. Your wounds matter. The pain you carry matters. And the healing you deserve matters. Not because suffering makes you special, but because you're human. And humans need emotional healing to thrive. Sleep offers that healing generously, automatically, every single night. It doesn't judge your wounds as too small or too large. It simply works with whatever you bring. This is grace. The brain's capacity to attempt repair regardless of how many times you've been hurt, how long you've struggled, or whether you think you deserve healing. Imagine a future where your wounds are lighter, where memories exist but don't control you, where you can trust, connect, rest without constant vigilance. Sleep is the bridge to that future, not the only bridge. but a fundamental one. Each night you sleep well. You cross a little farther. Each morning you wake rested. You're a little closer. The destination isn't forgetting or pretending pain never happened. It's integration. Carrying your history without being crushed by it. This knowledge places responsibility and opportunity in your hands. You can't undo the past. You can't prevent all future wounds. But you can honor the healing processes your brain offers each night. You can protect your sleep. You can create safety. You can trust your nervous system's wisdom. This is agency. Not over what happened to you, but over how you support your own healing. It's not about controlling outcomes. It's about tending to the conditions that allow healing to unfold. Understanding how sleep repairs emotional wounds gives you tools, not guarantees. The mechanisms exist. The processes are real. But healing is complex, influenced by countless factors beyond just sleep. Yet knowing that your brain is working on your behalf every night, that evolution designed sophisticated systems to help you recover from pain, that rest is not weakness but biological necessity. This knowledge can shift how you approach your own healing journey. You're not broken. You're a biological organism using biological processes to heal biological and psychological wounds. So how does sleep repair your emotional wounds? Through the remarkable convergence of neurochemistry, brain architecture, evolutionary design, and the simple act of letting go into unconsciousness. Through REM sleep's careful processing of emotional memories, through deep sleep's calming of inflammation, through dreams' integration of complexity, through the restoration of emotional regulation systems that daytime exhausts, through mechanisms we're still discovering and others we may never fully understand. The repair happens whether you believe in it or not, whether you understand it or not. It happens because evolution built it into the very structure of your nervous system. It happens because you are designed to heal. And every night, when you close your eyes and surrender to sleep, the repair begins again. And so, our quiet journey through sleep's healing power comes to a gentle close. We've traveled from understanding what emotional wounds are, recognizing how sleep detects them, discovering the repair mechanisms working in darkness, exploring why evolution made this possible, and arriving at what this means for your own healing, from the neural architecture of trauma to the chemical restoration of deep sleep. We've glimpsed how your brain is your most devoted healer. Sleep reminds us that healing doesn't always require doing. Sometimes it requires allowing. Much of the most profound repair happens in surrender, in rest, in the quiet hours when your conscious mind steps aside. Sleep reveals patience, gentleness, and the wisdom of your own biology working on your behalf. Without your effort or even your awareness, without adequate sleep, emotional wounds accumulate, deepen, overwhelm. With it, you access your brain's most sophisticated healing systems. By pausing to notice, we glimpse the extraordinary in the ordinary, the nightly miracle of emotional repair. In these final minutes, take the deepest breath you can, as deep as possible. Think about the unity of every moment in your healing journey. You are not separate from those who came before, who suffered and slept and woke to try again. You are a link in the endless chain of humans learning to carry pain gently. Think about consciousness itself. Yours, mine, everyone listening, all awareness everywhere, perhaps all connected in ways we don't yet understand. You are not alone in the universe of minds. Let your entire being dissolve into the ocean of consciousness, into dreamless rest, into the space before thought. Prepare for deep sleep. No boundaries left, only peace. If this thoughtful exploration of the mind made you relax, fall asleep, or sparked curiosity tonight, a gentle like and subscribe helps other sleepless souls discover this peaceful space too. It only takes a moment, but it means the world to us. One quiet tap, one sleepy soul at a time. But there's no need to do anything now. Nothing at all. You've traveled far tonight, farther than most journeys take you. You can allow these thoughts of emotional healing to fade now, like morning mist dissolving in sunlight, leaving only the gentle calm behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, as if gravity itself has become softer, more welcoming, pulling you gently downward. If sleep comes, let it carry you like a warm current, smoothly, inevitably, into a realm where time and weight no longer matter. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting for you, ready to continue the journey. But if they're closed, stay there. Stay in the darkness that feels safe and warm. Tomorrow, your emotions will still need attention. Your wounds will still be healing. But tonight belongs to stillness. Rest well, gentle soul, and remember, your brain knows how to heal. You just need to give it permission to do what it's designed to do. Fall asleep to gentle facts. Where science meets sleep, dream deeper with bedtime science. Relax, listen, and drift into sleep. Good night.